Do you realize how long the Earth has been around for? Over the last 4.5 billion years, some insane stuff has happened on this big blue rock, like the rainstorm that lasted a million years, or when the Earth actually created its own nuclear reactor 2 billion years ago. I'm Mike with List 25, and today I'm bringing you 25 facts about geologic time that made our brains hurt, starting with the one that makes it clear we only just got here. If the Earth's entire 4.5 billion year history were condensed into a 24-hour clock, the first 21 hours would pass without a single complex organism. Life started slow. It was mostly microbes, oceans, and tectonic drama. The dinosaurs show up around 10:45 p.m. That killer asteroid hit just before 11:40. The hominids, which include the great apes and early humans, don't even show up until the last 2 minutes before midnight. And modern humans? We're fashionably late, sliding in with just 12 seconds left on the clock. That's how new we are. All of our discoveries, hopes, dreams, every empire, invention, and Spotify playlist barely fit into a blink at the very end. Now, while scientists have a decent grip on when life first showed up here on Earth, they're still debating where it came from, and Mars is a serious contender. We've actually found more than 100 meteorites here that seem to have come from the red planet. They're volcanic, some clearly formed in water, and a few might even show fossil-like traces. The current thinking is that a massive impact blasted Martian rock into space around 15 million years ago, and some of those rocks crash-landed here 13,000 years ago. They might have even brought a few hitchhiking microbes. We know extremophiles, like the Yellowstone hot spring survivors, can live inside rocks, and studies show they'd only need about 2 inches of shielding to survive re-entry. Even if they didn't bring life itself, those Martian visitors might have just provided the raw ingredients the Earth needed to get things started. I should also talk about the time Earth got stuck in a million-year-long rain season. And no, I am not exaggerating. It's known as the Carnian Pluvial episode, and it hit about 232 million years ago. Back then, Pangaea was a hot, dry supercontinent, but then something shifted, which triggered massive volcanic eruptions, wild climate swings, and suddenly, the skies opened up. Places like modern-day Utah were getting over 50 inches of rain a year. That is rainforest-level downpour, year after year, for centuries. It was so extreme, it wiped out a third of all marine life, but it also changed everything on land. Reshaped the terrain, soaked the ecosystem, and may have cleared the way for dinosaurs to take over. Dinosaurs tend to hog the spotlight when we talk about deep time, but Mount Roraima had already been around for more than 1 billion years by then. The world's oldest mountain is part of the Guiana Shield, a chunk of Earth's original crust that dates back 2 billion years. That's pre-dinosaur, pre-oxygen atmosphere, pretty much everything. It sits right where Venezuela, Guyana, and Brazil meet, and when the rain hits the mountain just right, water spills off every side like a natural infinity pool. The whole place feels untouched by time and otherworldly, so much so that it actually inspired Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World. Then again, the oceans were just as busy, and the oldest reef we've found is almost 550 million years old. It's just not underwater anymore. Today, it lies exposed, stretching more than 4.3 miles across the desert. The builders were tiny, tube-shaped creatures called Claudina. They made their own calcium carbonate cement, kind of like modern corals, and used it to build giant reef structures. No one's totally sure why they built in clusters, but fossils from China show signs of acid damage, suggesting they had predators. Stacking together probably offered some protection. And as filter feeders living in tall stationary towers, well, that meant they had a steady flow of food, which gave them a solid edge in a crowded ocean. And while Claudina helped build the first reefs, other prehistoric species just kept going. Horseshoe crabs, for example, have been around for 450 million years, which means they outlived the dinosaurs twice over. They've survived at least 5 mass extinctions and barely changed in all of that time. But even they are not the oldest life forms still in the fossil record. In 2020, scientists found fossilized green algae called Proterocladus antiquus, a seaweed that lived over 1 billion years ago. It's one of the earliest known ancestors of land plants. And it's not even alone. Red algae fossils found in Canada and India date back 1.2 to 1.6 billion years. On the other hand, there's a tiny crystal in Australia that makes even 1.6 billion-year-old algae look brand new. It's a zircon, and it's been dated to around 4.375 billion years old. That makes it the oldest solid piece of Earth we've ever found. It formed just 165 million years after the planet itself came together, which is practically instant in geologic time. But what's even more surprising is what they found inside. Trace elements in the crystal suggest that early Earth wasn't just a molten mass. It might have already had water, a stable crust, and conditions not too different from today. According to geochemist John Valley, it was actually, quote, more like the Earth we know now than anyone expected. Sticking with surprising finds in solid stone, researchers recently found something alive inside a 2 billion-year-old rock. The sample came from South Africa's Bushveld Igneous Complex, a massive underground formation about the size of Ireland. Deep inside, they found microbes packed into tiny cracks, sealed in by clay, and completely cut off from the outside world. No sunlight, no fresh air, and yet still alive. These microbes move through life at a crawl. They barely evolve, survive on almost nothing, and have been doing it for millions of years. Before this, the oldest known habitat for living microbes was around 100 million years old. Now, scientists think these ancient survivors might help us understand how life worked at the very beginning. Of course, we humans aren't all that great at wrapping our heads around timelines that stretch beyond a few thousand years, which is probably why most people think that T-Rex and Stegosaurus lived in the same era. In reality, Stegosaurus lived during the late Jurassic period, around 150 million years ago. T-Rex didn't show up until the very end of the Cretaceous, about 65 million years ago. That's an 80 million year gap, which means T-Rex actually lived closer to us than it did to Stegosaurus. Still, if you looked up during the age of the dinosaurs, you might have seen patterns of lava oozing on the moon. We already knew the moon had volcanic activity billions of years ago, but images from NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter have now suggested that it didn't stop there. Some lava deposits appear to be less than 100 million years old, and one might be as recent as 50 million. That means volcanoes would have still been erupting during the Mesozoic era, right around the time T-Rex was stomping through the Cretaceous forests. So the night sky during the dinosaur age probably looked a bit more lively than we previously thought. Which brings me to another strange chapter in Earth's history. The time giant mushrooms were taller than giraffes. For more than a century, scientists argued about what prototaxites actually were. It looked like a massive tree stump, about 24 feet tall and 3 feet wide, but no one could decide if it was a plant, algae, or something else entirely. That mystery finally cracked in 2007 when researchers analyzed its carbon isotopes and found that the results didn't match any known plant, but they did match fungi. You see, 400 million years ago, land plants were tiny, just simple stems with no leaves or roots. That gave prototaxites a serious height advantage. And while no one's totally sure why it grew so big, the leading theory is spore power, taller and farther. Moving on. What researchers uncovered at the bottom of a Canadian mine left even seasoned geologists stunned. 2 miles underground, in rock that used to be part of an ancient ocean floor, they discovered a pocket of water that's been sealed off for 2.64 billion years. That makes it the oldest water ever found on Earth, older than multicellular life. It's not unusual for water to get trapped in cracks for a long time, but most samples clock in at a few million years. This one blew right past that. And primordial water like this tends to contain the building blocks for life. While no living microbes have been found in this sample, its chemical makeup suggests it once supported life deep underground, and may still hold clues about how life survives in extreme environments. There's also the fact that for half of Earth's existence, breathing would have been impossible. For the first 2 billion years, the atmosphere had almost no oxygen at all. That changed with the Great Oxidation Event about 2.5 billion years ago, when cyanobacteria in the ocean started releasing oxygen through photosynthesis. Over millions of years, the planet's air began to shift. Now, it wasn't a smooth transition. Oxygen was toxic to many early microbes, and a huge number of them died off. But others adapted, and that oxygen eventually made complex life possible. Anyway, while life was getting more complicated, time itself decided to pause. Earth's rotation has been gradually slowing ever since the moon formed. Its gravitational pull tugs on the oceans, creating tides that act like a brake. That's why our days keep getting slightly longer, gaining about 1.7 milliseconds every century. But between 2 billion and 600 million years ago, that slowdown stopped. For over 1 billion years, Earth's day stayed locked at around 19.5 hours. So what happened? Well, the sun pushed back. Just like the moon pulls on the oceans, sunlight creates pressure in Earth's atmosphere. Normally it's a small effect, but back then the atmosphere was warmer and those bulges lined up just right with Earth's spin. That gave the sun's gravity just enough pull to cancel out the moon's braking effect. It was a total fluke, a 1 in a billion alignment of temperature, timing, and spin. But without it, we might be stuck with 60-hour days today. But let's forget the surface for a second. Most of Earth's microbial life is actually buried deep underground. Scientists estimate that around 15% of all life on Earth by biomass lives beneath the surface. And when it comes to microbes specifically, that's even more extreme. Around 90% of all bacteria and archaea live in the deep subsurface, crammed into rock pores and aquifers miles below our feet. Some scientists even think life may have started underground, where it was protected from UV radiation, wild temperature swings, and asteroid impacts. So yeah, that classic image of life bubbling up in a warm tide pool, we might need to rethink it completely. Either way, Earth has a habit of flipping the script, like turning grasslands into deserts in just a few thousand years. As recently as 6,000 years ago, the Sahara wasn't a sea of sand, it was a lush, green landscape with lakes, rain, and grazing animals. Yeah, grasslands, not dunes. People even lived there, herding livestock across what's now a bone-dry desert. Scientists believe the change came about as part of a natural climate cycle driven by shifting monsoon patterns. Others believe humans had a hand in it, that early herders overgrazed the land, which reduced moisture in the air and helped dry things out even faster. Whatever the cause, the transformation was massive and surprisingly fast in geologic terms. The most amazing part is that it could swing all the way back the other way. According to long-term climate models, the Sahara might even go green again in about 14,000 years. Now, let's go from the future of a desert to the birth of the planet itself. Scientists found volcanic rock on Baffin Island in the Canadian Arctic that holds a chemical signature from Earth's earliest days. The rock itself isn't really that old, maybe 60 to 100 million years, but it erupted from deep within the mantle, from material that may have remained unchanged since Earth first formed 4.5 billion years ago. That's incredibly rare. Most of early Earth got recycled by tectonic chaos, but this stuff somehow dodged it all, and finally surfaced in a volcanic eruption. Even crazier, it holds a mix of lead, neodymium, and helium-3, a trio scientists have never seen together before. It's basically a chemical fossil from a time before continents even existed. Okay, let's look at an important birthday, one that barely makes the cut on Earth's geologic calendar. Mount Etna, on the island of Sicily, is one of the oldest active volcanoes in the world. It's a stratovolcano, the violent, high-drama kind, and it's still very much alive. But here's the thing. Even at 350,000 years old, Etna is a baby compared to Earth itself. If you squeezed all of geologic time into a single calendar year, and Earth forms on January 1st, Etna doesn't even show up until December 31st. That's because volcanoes, for all of their power, have relatively short lifespans, and they usually only stick around for somewhere between 10,000 to 500,000 years. So they come and go. But the deepest part of our planet only just showed up. For more than 3 billion years, the Earth's core was molten. No solid center. The inner core didn't even start to solidify until just 1 to 1.3 billion years ago, which for a planet this old is kind of bizarre. So if you think about it, Earth had already grown continents, created life, and wiped it out a few times before it bothered to lock in a solid engine at its center. But that's not even the strangest part. While all of that was being figured out, Earth had already mastered nuclear engineering. About 2 billion years ago, in what is now Gabon, Africa, a rich uranium deposit went critical. It just took the right mix of uranium, groundwater, and surrounding rock. The result? A naturally occurring nuclear reactor, now called the Oklo-fossil reactor. It was discovered in 1972, when scientists noticed the uranium ore had less of the isotope U-235 than expected, a clue that nuclear reactions had already happened. The prehistoric reactor ran for hundreds of thousands of years, cycling on and off as groundwater flowed in to keep the reactions going. So far, it's the only known place on Earth where nature pulled off nuclear fission without any help. And then there's the crater near Million-Year in Greenland that could rewrite impact history. Here, scientists have uncovered what might be the world's oldest and largest meteorite impact site. The structure is about 3 billion years old, and based on what's left today, may have originally measured over 300 miles or 500 kilometers wide. That would put it ahead of the South Africa Vredefort crater in both age and scale. Researcher Adam Gard is convinced it's a crater. His team found shattered circular rock formations, melted potassium feldspar, and signs of ocean water rushing in after the blast, all hallmarks of a massive impact. They estimate the meteorite that hit was around 19 miles or 30 kilometers wide, powerful enough to cause total extinction if it struck today. Not everyone's fully sold, though. Some geologists say we're still learning how to spot ancient impact craters this old. But if Gard's right, Greenland might hold the scar from one of Earth's first extinction-level events. On the other side of the coin from destruction, there's creation, and possibly the oldest animals we've ever found. Researchers discovered tiny tube-shaped impressions in 890 million-year-old Canadian rock that might be the fossilized remains of early sea sponges. If that's the case, it would push the timeline for animal life back by more than 350 million years, way before the Cambrian explosion. We already know that life had been around for a while before then. Like I said earlier, we found fossilized algae over 1 billion years old, but those were plant-like. These sponge-like creatures could be the oldest evidence of actual animals. Simple, soft-bodied organisms drifting through low-oxygen oceans we used to think were uninhabitable. Let's move on from soft-bodied creatures to something a lot bigger. We all know about Pangaea, the supercontinent that eventually split into the landmasses we have today. But that wasn't Earth's first go at it. And it won't be the last. Geologists estimate that the continents break apart and slam back together roughly every 600 million years. Before Pangaea, there were others, like Gondwana and Laurussia, which merged and drifted around long before dinosaurs showed up. Right now, we're in a separated phase. But according to some researchers, the next supercontinent, already nicknamed Amasia, could form in as little as 200 million years. Since I just covered the next supercontinent, well, how about one we completely missed? It's known as Zealandia, and it's Earth's mostly submerged 8th continent. It formed roughly 80 million years ago, and since 95% of it is underwater, only its highest peaks, like New Zealand and New Caledonia, break the surface. Zealandia has all the geographical features of a proper continent: thick continental crust, varied rock types, and even massive mountain ranges hidden beneath the waves. Scientists only finished mapping the whole thing in 2023, so we've spent the better part of modern history living on top of 2,600 miles of continent without realizing it was even there. And finally, let's end today's list with the fact that prehistory ended at different times, depending on where you find yourself on the map. By definition, prehistory is the time before written records, which means it ended thousands of years apart, depending on where you were living in the world. In Mesopotamia, writing showed up around 3400 BCE with cuneiform. Egypt followed not long after with its hieroglyphs. But on the other side of the globe, whole civilizations were still living without written language for millennia. In New Guinea, for example, the first written records of Papuan languages didn't even appear until the late 1800s. That's a 5,000-year gap in when history officially starts. So yeah, for some people, prehistory ended with clay tablets. For others, it ended after the invention of the steam engine. And that's it for today. Which of these facts caught you off guard? Or is there another wild geologic discovery you think should have made the list? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're into facts that sound totally made up but aren't, check out our related video, 25 Real Facts That Sound Like Tall Tales. I covered the nun who faked her death to escape a convent, how sandwiches started the prison riot, and even how a German supermarket got in trouble for selling gendered sausages. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss it on any new content, and Catch you guys next time.